As you all know, we are in the season of the Passover, the resurrection, you know, and Jesus dying and coming back to life again. And, you know, this happens every year anyway. We celebrate it. You know, Yirser, he's so good at what he does. And his history is always great. And we're going to get into, you know, he is the master of Kemetic yoga, you know. And as you all know, right now what's being coordinated is the Soul Yoga Fest that's going to take place July 5th through the 7th, okay? I'm not going to talk and get into it, but I'll get back to it because, of course, we need vendors and sponsors and any and everybody, volunteers and media, to be at Fuller Park and participating with us. I want this to be the biggest of the biggest. So, you know, he working me hard, though. I just want you all to know. Coordinating it isn't not always easy, but I love what I'm doing.
That's why you make the big bucks.
I sure do. I make the big bucks. I do. And I appreciate it, and I'm thankful that you have allowed me to stay on the team.
Well, you are the team. Oh, no team without team, so.
Lord. There we go. Okay, so yeah. Let's get into the true. Can you talk about the truth of the resurrection and where all of the elements came from? What really did exist first?
Well, first of all, I want to, before we get into that.
I like to get into it.
Making people mad at me.
I don't want to make nobody mad at you.
I want to say this about yoga, about Kemetic yoga, what the chef is talking about in terms of food and the importance of it. You know, when it comes to yoga, 50% of yoga practice is what you eat, what you put into your body. And so that's very important for people to understand. It's not just doing different positions and stuff. You know, you have to, you have to do, if you put in some chitlins in your body or some fried chicken and then you're doing some yoga, that's like counterproductive, because like the chef is saying, it's working with your blood. And when you do yoga, you increase your blood circulation. So I'm going to eat some fried chicken with all of this fat and all this other stuff in it, and then I'm going to circulate that deep into my tissues with my blood, with my increased blood circulation. So that's just one of the thoughts I had about, you know, from listening to you, you know. Now, when it comes to yoga and resurrection, you know, so we talking about Easter is this day they call Easter is coming up, and you know, I don't want all my Christian friends to get mad at me, you know, but they shouldn't get mad, because
they should.
In reality, the idea of resurrection is an idea that comes from ancient Africa, and in fact, Christianity adopted that from ancient Africa. They adopted many of their concepts in terms of resurrection, the Savior, Immaculate Birth, what else? All of those things, you know.
Those things happen.
Yeah. And so the idea of a Savior being born to a virgin, that is a concept that comes from ancient Africa. It comes from the story of Yirser and Aset. Yirser being who the Greeks call Osiris, and Aset being who they call Isis now. But their proper names are Yirser and Aset. And Yirser was the king. He was the father of civilization in ancient Africa, in ancient Kemet, or what they call Egypt now. And he introduced people to agriculture. He introduced people to how to domesticate animals. He introduced people to, you know, everything that you needed to have in order to have civilization. And the civilization was built upon agriculture, like what the brother has been talking about in terms of what you eat. You have to, your civilization begins with the food that you eat. And so oftentimes you would even see pictures of Yirser. His skin is green because he represents the whole idea of rebirth. So what ancient people did was that they would take ideas about the nature of things, and they would create stories around them. Okay? And so and so you sort of create a mythology or a story or a legend that illustrates the principle that you're trying to talk about, that you're trying to get people to think about in terms of their consciousness. And so the whole idea of resurrection is an idea that doesn't just apply to this supposed savior, it applies to everybody. Okay. So like say, when I was 21, I decided to do all the things that the chef was telling us about in terms of changing my diet and cleansing and all that stuff. That was like 44 years ago. So, yeah, 44. Yeah, a long time ago.
Wow, okay.
So that's how long I've been a vegan. But when I did that, I started to study the ancient Kemetic history and the philosophy and the spiritual science. I decided to name myself Osiris. And then I was corrected by one of my teachers who gave me the name Yirser. And so Yirser is a variation of Asar, which means to be reborn. And so I felt like because I had changed from this diet, this so-called way of eating that we, as the brother so elegantly spoke about, making that transition from, I was born in the city. I wasn't born in the South. So I wasn't born on the land. So I was born in the city, growing up eating the fried chicken and all this stuff, which is supposedly called soul food or supposedly be soul food or Southern food, which is not really what it is. It's just something that evolved as a convenient way of preparing fast food. That was fast food that people would eat on the ride from the drive from the south up to the north. And so they would, make it, and they have it wrapped up in that aluminum foil, and they pull it out and eat it. That was fast food.
Okay, that was fast food.
Yeah, but it wasn't healthy. So, so I adopted that name, Asar, to represent my own personal resurrection from having headaches every day, from having stomach aches every day, to have a low energy every day from the time that I was 6 years old until the time I was 21. Even though I excelled in sports, I excelled in school, but I still didn't feel right. I felt bad. Okay. So I adopted that name because after I became a vegan, I was a totally different person. I had became resurrected. Okay. And so each person needs to resurrect themselves. So in the story of Asar, which is the original resurrection, in that story, he wasn't crucified on a cross.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Even though the cross has a lot of different mythological and astrological and astronomical significance to it. But in the story of Asar, his body was cut into 14 pieces and then scattered. And so his wife, as part of the process of resurrecting him, she had to go and collect the different body parts and put them back together. So the recollection and the reassemblage of your body is a metaphor for the practice of yoga.
Hello, did y'all get that?
Because we're doing movements, postures, positions that are realigning, correcting, reassembling the body in the manner that it's going to have its best way of operating, okay? So when we talk about resurrection, when we talk about rebirth, we have to put that element into it. Eating the food that you eat. In ancient Kemet, the priests who were on the higher, like the common people ate meat, ate different things, but not to the degree that you see people eating meat now. Meat was a rarity. It was an exception. It wasn't the rule. It was something that you may have as a delicacy or something. It wasn't something that you ate every day or at every meal. And that was not true during in Southern times. It was never true during slavery. In slavery, people wasn't eating guts and all kind of stuff. People was eating plants. Okay. They was eating the greens in their garden. They was eating the sweet potato. They was eating different things like that. They wasn't eating all of this guts. the way the mythology is talking about it, chitlins and all this stuff, you know. That wasn't the main food even of enslaved Africans. So so all of that to say, yes. When it comes to the idea of resurrection, this is an idea of our personal resurrection. How do we move ourselves? You know, the whole story of Jesus being resurrected is a metaphor for how we should be, how we should behave. Not something that's saying this was a person who did this and we're supposed to worship this person. We're supposed to take those principles and apply them to ourselves. And so in the story, Yirser was reassembled by his wife, and she allowed him to be resurrected. While he was still deceased, she was able to obtain his life force and bring it into her body to conceive their child. And so she gave birth to what they call immaculate conception. And that's a misconception too. Immaculate conception is a misconception because the word immaculate is supposed to mean clean and so on and so forth, as if having sex and having a child is unclean. You know, all births are immaculate. Every time a woman gives birth, that is an immaculate conception. That child was conceived immaculately, and that child was birthed in a state of wholesome purity and not in sin the way they try to convince us, but that child is being born in a state of grace. We all are born in this state of grace. You know, that's the way our ancestors understood things. But these other people have flipped the script. I go to Egypt every year. I've been there 21 times. When I visit the temples, I see the images of our Yirser and our Set. I see the images on the walls of our Set giving birth to Heru. That's their son. And that's what, and his name, he's the savior. What's his name? Heru. Heru is where the word hero comes from. Who is the hero? The hero is the one who saves the day. So his name is Heru. And so every king of Kemet had to adopt the name. He had to adopt what they call the Heru name. And he had to take a vow, just like you see these people who they call presidents of the United States, right? Take vows. They had to do their oath, right?
Their oath, yes.
So in Kemet, the oath was that I had to become like I had to become like Heru, and I have to maintain Ma'at. So Ma'at means that there is a universal order to everything, that the nature of the universe is order, and that I, as the king, either the king of the nation or the king of myself and my family, I take a vow to uphold and to elevate everything that I do within my art. And when I see that things are not in order, when I see things are not in my art, then it is my obligation to return them to that state. And so that includes your body. So if your body is consuming meat, animal products, junk food, McDonald's, Burger King, Coca-Cola, all of that stuff, it's your obligation to, number one, learn why this is bad for you, and then to correct that. That is the way our ancestors set it up. And so this whole idea of a resurrection, this is where it actually comes from. But this was adopted. What I was going to say earlier, so to skip my mind, was like when I go to the temples in Kemet, I see these images of our ancestors, of our Yirser, our Set, of the resurrection, and I see where the ancient Christians who had came into Egypt, you know, around the 3rd century, I see where they have chopped the images into pieces, you know, because they talk about how the noses on the statues have been broken in many cases, and the common story that we as the conscious black people get is that the white people chopped them off because they didn't want us to see that these people was black. But before that was happening, the Christians was chopping their faces off. They would try to destroy the whole body of images on the walls and of statues, including the face, because they said this is pagan. This is
idol worship.
Idol worshiping and stuff like that, because they didn't understand what they were doing. So they adopted that. They adopted the whole idea of the Trinity. They adopted the idea of resurrection, of immaculate birth, so on and so forth. But again, immaculate birth is a misconception.
Y'all learning something today?
Oh, yeah.
You want to get into the conversation? You sure?
I'm good.
Are you?
I'm good. Really good.
Hey, Weezy, you want to say anything? You want to get in?
This is something I've never. I mean, isn't something that I haven't heard before. You know what I mean? It's all about your personal perceptions. You know what I mean? About your beliefs. I mean, I'm listening. I'm observing, and with everything, especially when it comes to any form of religion, I'm one. I listen more than I speak on it because I want to be able to take it in. I have to do my own research.
Yes.
One of the first things I've always learned is never just take word of mouth. You know what I mean? Sometimes facts can't be broken. That's why it's called facts. When you get to the facts of things, that's when you get your beliefs. So I listen, I learn, I observe. I might take a few mental notes, then I go do my research.
Yeah.
Danny?
No, you know, everybody has their way of beliefs. So I can't, you know, I'm just taking it all in, just listening instead of speaking.
Okay. All right.
Well,
Hey, Chef, you got something?
My name is Amin Hotep.
Yeah, come on now, talk
That's
about
new.
it. All right. See,
So I'm in
kids-
right in alignment with it. My teacher gave me the name Amin Hotep. You know, I heard that in the beginning, and I really understand where he's coming from and agree with it 100%. I'm right in alignment with it. When I heard it, you know, and I'm gonna give the mic back to him, but I just want to say those words, changing, using the right words are important. Because I remember I was using Horus and Osiris, and even changing it to our tones, Heru and Asir, I can just feel the whole different vibration of even saying our ancestors' titles and names right. So I'm very grateful, and Hotep. Yes.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate to have a certain exposure at an early age. So by me coming from Chicago and being raised in the projects on 39th Street, which was like a block away from the place that they call the Center for Inner City Studies, you know, I was able to go to places like the Topographical Center, which I don't know if a lot of people know about that place, but that was a place where brothers like Brother Olamenji, who people might know, created to give us political education. The Northeast Illinois University, which is on Oakwood Boulevard, is a place where I worked on a master's degree. So I was able to get see, for me, it's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of what is a fact. When I was in second grade, I was going to Catholic school, and when I was in second grade, they was teaching us catechism, and they said Mary had a baby without having sex. So I raised my hand and I said, "No, sister. In order to have a baby, you have to have sex." How did I know that? Because I watched Channel 11, WTTW. I watched the public television, and they had the movie or the film. They had video back. They had a movie with the sperm coming, attaching itself to the egg, and then it multiplied and all this stuff, and then a baby was coming. You know.
Right.
So when I interjected, they slapped me. You know, they beat me. This is at Holy Angel School on the Oakwood Boulevard.
Wow.
So I never forget. That beating I had to take, it didn't change my perspective because it was like, it's a fact. So when you start to travel and you start to do the research, so you got all types of different books. Everybody that goes to seminary school that calls themselves a Christian preacher, right? Or a priest. Everything I'm talking about, they know this already.
Oh, they do.
They already know this stuff. They know that Christianity received the foundation of their belief system from Africa. They know that for a 500-year period, there was a council called the Council of Nicaea, where they debated throughout Christendom, who is Jesus? What is his nature? Is there a Trinity? is their immaculate conception. How are we gonna formulate these ideas in order to present these ideas to the masses of the people? You know, so they had debates. That's why you have a Greek Orthodox church. That's why you have a Coptic church in Egypt. That's why you have a Roman Catholic church. That's why you have an Ethiopian church. You have all these different branches because they all conceive of the same information in the same, you know, in different ways. And so they have different approaches to the theology. So all of them don't believe in the same thing. If you talk to a Seventh-day Adventist or a Jehovah's Witness, they don't celebrate things, Christmas. Nobody believes, none of these people believe that Christmas is on December 25th. Or that, you know, when they talk about Jesus being born on a manger and it was 3 wise men coming to see him and so on and so forth, all this stuff is astrology.
Okay, astrology.
It's astrology and astronomy. Okay. Because those two things are linked. Because you have to have an accurate understanding of the movements of the planets, of the heavenly bodies in the cosmos, in order to have an accurate type of astrology. And so they had to study these things. They studied these things in intimate detail. And you're talking about civilizations in Africa that lasted thousands of years. So they observed the heavens for thousands of years. And they able to, and these ancient sages that did these things, they was able to see motions with their bare eyes that we had to have telescopes to see, because their eyes was totally in tune differently to light vibration in the way our eyes are. So it's a whole bunch of deep stuff. So we're not talking about belief or faith. We're talking about what can be verified, you know, through observation and through common sense. And we know that religion is always trying to make us feel guilty. That's why they say when you're born, you have a sin. You know, we're born in grace. We're not born in sin. That's like what you call it, a okie doke.
Okie doke.
Yeah, to make you feel guilty.
Right. Because they always, I mean, it's always been said that, you know, you were born into sin and, you know, this is why you have to get saved. And here go me. I'm getting saved from what? Who's saving me? But that's another conversation. You know, again, it's what are the facts? What is true? You know, and I'll let everybody believe what they want to believe. But sometimes I think a lot of us are brainwashed. I think a lot of us can be blind to what the truth is. And when you get the truth, then you'll tell us that we're telling a story or it's a lie. And then when we challenge that science that we've been taught all down the years, and I'm still waiting for Jesus to come back, because they put that fear in my heart that Jesus was coming back. And that's why I had to get saved, because Jesus was coming back, you know. But that's no here, no there. I don't know how true it is. It hasn't happened. And I'm just going to keep on my journey and experiencing what I need to experience from Kemetic yoga, from changing my lifestyle. And it is a practice every day. I am not perfect, but I'm learning. And I think I'll be better in the next 10 to 20 years. I want to be around for a long time, too.
Well, another thing, too, about my brother's, his name is Chef Amen.
Chef Amen, yes.
After everybody pray, they say, Amen. Amen means, Amen is an ancient Kemetic or ancient Egyptian, ancient African word. It relates to the hidden, something you cannot see, that force, that power that animates the universe, which is invisible. That's why in Islam they talk about Allah, right? Allah, you know, is not, they don't want you to make an image of Allah, anything like that, because Allah means that which is unseen.
That which is unseen.
So all of this stuff has connections going back to ancient Africa. And so we have to be open-minded enough to say, I want to know truth. Because when you know truth, that's when you are resurrected. You know, when you are staying back and being afraid to confront and to question, that is the true state of death. You know, so having the courage to confront and to question these things, you know, that's how we break out of the matrix, because that's what we're in. We're in a matrix. We're in a controlled environment where all of our energy is being sucked out of us for the benefit of somebody else. Slavery.
Hey, well, I mean, oh man, it's the truth. I mean, well, okay. Anybody want to talk? Anybody want to jump in? Hey, call us at 312-985-7834. Come on, DJ Bam. Let's get it. So we're going to be wrapping up. We're going to be wrapping up. You want to give your information, where people can reach you? You want to talk about
So yoga fest.